I was just getting ready to publish a video today on the importance of physical media and my copy of River City Saga finally coming in, which took almost a year. But this came out instead, so I thought we would spend a few moments talking about this. It's all over. I'm going to post this specific article, but there are many others to read if you don't want to look at this specific one. Microsoft wins the Federal Trade Commission fight to buy Activision Blizzard. So most of the hurdles are now finally over in terms of Microsoft finally being able to acquire Activision Blizzard. Think back to how long this process has been going on. It's been quite a while, right? So what ultimately happened was when Microsoft announced that they wanted to buy Activision Blizzard, everybody gets to have their say. All of these international committees who evaluate fair trade and who evaluate the free market have to then determine if this is okay to do. Obviously, the biggest proponent being Sony, the direct competitor to Microsoft, and they really pulled a lot of their lobbying strings to get a lot of our United States government spun up to try to fight against this because they don't want to lose the cash cow, Call of Duty, on their consoles. And it's pretty clear, I think, to everyone at this point that Microsoft is not buying Activision Blizzard to immediately turn around and give Call of Duty to everybody. And this is true with all the Bethesda games. We've kind of seen this start to trickle out slowly from the Xbox Bethesda game showcase. Microsoft isn't in the business to buy something just to turn around and do business as usual. There was an email that came out during all of this really messy lawsuits and these litigations from Matt Booty some time ago that basically said Microsoft's core strategy should be to essentially buy out Sony and to basically spend so much money they murder Sony's business. This is a very common business practice. Amazon has done the exact same thing to big business, to big box businesses, the stores, for many, many years, taking massive losses in their sales just so that you would come back to them over and over again, or taking such a small profit that they could sell mass amounts of bulk and they didn't have to make big hits. It drove a lot of mom and pop video game stores and a lot of mom and pop stores just in general out of business because Amazon did it faster, better, and cheaper. So this is not a new business strategy by any stretch of the imagination, but let's go back to the article here. This makes sense that Xbox is, trying to pull away and to take all these businesses away from Sony. So that was the big point of contention. The Federal Trade Commission basically did they wanted to do what they call a preliminary injunction request, and it went before the court, and Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley listened to all this and decided to deny the request for a preliminary injunction. So if you look at the kind of tent poles of who is required to accept this deal, well, it's the governing body of that area. So with the Federal Trade Commission being the United States Regulatory Committee, now kind of having to take a back seat, that part of the deal is done. Recall, though, that Microsoft did, in fact, lose, I'm doing air quotes here, to the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, which is the United Kingdom's variant. They were not willing to accept this deal. So the article basically says, hey, listen, even though the FTC won, the Microsoft won that piece, they did not win the CMA thing. They did, though, win the European regulation go ahead. So there's like a 2 out of 3 ain't bad situation here. And what ultimately happens now is if Microsoft wants to proceed with this deal, they can technically now close everything. They don't need approval of every single country in order to do this deal. It just may impact their involvement or their sales or their whatever. So they want to get everybody on their side, obviously. And we'll kind of see what happens. There's an appeal that's already going through the CMA that's going to take some time to regulate, just as every regulation takes forever. But this is basically saying that, hey, this has been approved. Now, in fairness, as you know, all these, I'm suing and I'm appealing and all that stuff. The FTC does have that right to appeal the decision, but the reality is most likely it's done. As the court order stands, I think this is the key here. It's complicated. Where's it at? Let me find the exact quote here because I don't want to mislead and say the wrong thing. So yeah, the deal could technically close without the UK and without an injunction to the US preventing it. While that is a complicated scenario, we will likely see that Microsoft and Activision Blizzard will temporarily extend their merger agreement to cover yet the other appeal. So this is really, really, really big news, because if you really look at kind of the way the world market is shaped, the United States is kind of always been pivotal to that ever since its inception. A lot of the world market stems on the United States. All the talent for Microsoft and all the talent for Activision Blizzard is incorporated through the United States. Now, whether or not the employees actually work there or not is somewhat irrelevant. The fact is that it is an American company, and American companies in this case, that are competing to try to fight each other, or to merge to fight against Sony or to build their empire, which that's where all these, regulatory committees basically come into play, is to say, hey, is this legal? Is this ethical? And again, despite all, and I'm a Sony pony, and despite all the Sony, fighting back, and Jim Ryan and all these people and all the nasty emails that have come out and all the propaganda that's come out, Sony was unable to block this. They were unable to convince their local legislature, and they were unable to obviously make a big enough case via the FTC that this can go through. So seems like there's still some minor details to work out. It doesn't mean that Call of Duty is going to be on Game Pass tomorrow morning or anything like that. But I think what it does mean is this is a massive step in the Microsoft's approval process. So I would expect this deal to go through a lot sooner than people had thought. And I think there was a point of time where all of us collectively thought maybe the deal is not going to go through at all. Maybe the deal is going to completely fall flat on its face, because there is just so much overarching pressure. But as all of these court cases have gone through all the various countries, and as you've had to have Phil Spencer fly around and to have his day in court and to be grilled and digging through all these emails and all this political nonsense, it finally seems like there is definitely hope that it's going to happen. So very interesting here. I've done some videos in the past talking about it. Once the final details of this merger are clear and are known, I will definitely come back and talk about it more. I initially was a very big proponent against it for a lot of reasons, and I still think I skew that way, although there are some instances where I think Microsoft's injection of money and market share and Game Pass and maybe some different creative visions could ultimately slightly shape the way Activision Blizzard does business. That said, keep in mind as I close out this video, when Bethesda was bought by Microsoft, they still had a lot of existing agreements and contracts that were honored, even though Microsoft had taken over. That's why even after the merger was completed, you saw games like Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop still maintain their exclusivity for some time to PlayStation. I suspect that will be the case with Call of Duty and any of the other Activision Blizzard contracts and negotiations that are already in place. But I think the key is that if there is any injection of Microsoft management, so to speak, as they begin to lay that corporate umbrella over the Activision Blizzard, infrastructure, that process will take many, many, many years to fully integrate. This will not be an overnight change. And a lot of the quality, whether you like it or don't like it, that Microsoft will bring into Activision Blizzard will probably not be felt until at the earliest, probably 2025, maybe 2026. A lot of these games are already in production. A lot of the designs have already been made, and it's still full steam ahead. It's not going to be some time until Microsoft can come in and actually kind of change the policies or refuse and kind of just want to stay hands off. That remains to be seen as well. But if you look at Microsoft's track record of how they have managed some of their IPs, I think many of us, Halo fan here, may agree that they are not the best at it, which goes back to my original point as I wrapped up this video saying that I was against it, and I am still against it. But not for the reasons that the FTC or the CMA or any of the European regulation societies or organizations said. So there you have it. You know what I know? There are a lot of other people who are significantly smarter than me talking about it. There are people that are actually reading the entire court case, all 53 pages. You can click through and read all the discoveries and the bullets and the notes to understand a little bit more, or you could just take the short and simple version from your boy that, hey, it looks like it's a green light ahead. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.